Hello, children. I hope you and your family are doing fine and in good health. Yes, we are all together in this because we all are following stay safe, hashtag stay home. And no matter we are missing our classroom teaching, but we are still connected, isn't it? Through these online classes and WhatsApp groups. And it's really so good. And I know, children, life in this lockdown is not easy for any one of us. And it's important you balance your studies with other activities as well and keep yourself motivated. So you have to find out what keeps you happy and makes you laugh. So spend quality time with your parents, brothers and sisters. Stay bonded with family and friends. Call a few people each day and find out how they are doing, and you will also find yourself smiling. Follow a good routine. Don't stay awake in the night. So, take care of yourselves, take care of your health and your families. Thank you. So, let us move on to the topic. Today, we will start the topic in Chapter 2, Agriculture, Problems and Policies. So, in this topic, we will see the developments in the agricultural sector, the changes in agricultural sector during this time period. As you have already learned in the last topics that 5-year plans aimed at transforming a stagnant economy into a developing economy. So now we are going to understand how these developmental changes started to take place in the key sectors of the economy, and those key sectors are agricultural sector, industrial sector and trade. So first of all we will start with the agricultural sector, and our main aim is to understand the problems and policies that were undertaken to improve and revive agricultural sector. Now, features of Indian agriculture need not be elaborated in detail as the points are very clear, but we will quickly go through the points so that you can understand the details that are given in it. So, share in GDP. It was around 50% in the 1950s. Why? Because the agricultural sector was the only sector at that time. The other sectors were very much underdeveloped, the secondary and tertiary sectors, and hence the output of agricultural sector was maximum in the GDP, but which gradually reduced to 17% approximately in 2017. Now this has happened, the reduction in the share of agriculture in GDP happened due to the growth in secondary and tertiary sectors. I hope you are able to recall that there are three sectors in the economy: primary sector, which includes agriculture and allied activities; secondary sector includes all manufacturing activities; and tertiary sector, of course, is including services like transport, communication and banking. So, because there was growth in secondary and tertiary sectors as well after the 1950s, so gradually the share of agriculture started to decline in GDP, and the shares of these sectors started to increase as well. So let's go on to the next point: supply of wage goods. Now, what are wage goods? Wage goods can also be called consumption goods. Now, this name has come because these goods are the essential items that all people need. So even wage earners need these items and buy it because it is required for survival itself. So supply of wage goods comes from agriculture itself. Agriculture caters to the needs of for food items of our large population, and hence if the agriculture sector is impoverished or stagnant, it cannot cater to the needs of such a large population of India. Source of employment: over 75% of working population was engaged in agriculture in 1950s. So you have understood this point in chapter 1 itself, where the working population in agriculture was maximum. Why? Also because the secondary and tertiary sectors were in the underdeveloped stage. And but after gradually in this time period 1950 to 1990, there was a decrease in the working population engaged in agriculture, and it came down to around 40% in 2017. But it is still a significant provider of employment. Agriculture still remains a significant provider of employment because it's the working population engaged in agriculture is still comparatively higher than the other developed countries. Next, basis for industrial development. As you can see the point here, it's not only a supplier of raw materials. Agriculture is the supplier of raw materials to industries, and also it is a source of demand for industrial goods. Now this point is clear to you: supplier of raw materials to industries, and as a source of demand for industrial goods, that is capital goods. For example, I've put it here: machines required for agricultural production. So both industry and agriculture are linked to each other for development, because industry requires raw materials from agricultural sector, and agriculture sector depends on industries for its development through machines and tools which are acquired from the industrial sector. Importance in trade. Exports of various agricultural items are there which bring on in which also brings foreign exchange for the economy. So this is important because there are various agricultural items exported from our country, and it helps in bringing foreign exchange for the economy. As you know, in chapter 1, 2, where you have come to learn that India was richly endowed with resources, and agriculture sector was also endowed with various crop protection. So still now agricultural sector is an important part in trade as for exporting various agricultural items. Foreign exchange, which is earned through exporting of items, is then helpful in paying the bills of imports. So next point, basis of development of services. Now services sector is the tertiary sector that I mentioned here. The services sector also gains its development when the agriculture sector is developed. So like transport, communications, banking, etc. That means we are talking about the infrastructural base also. So agriculture helps in developing the services sector as well, because services sector supports the agricultural sector as well industrial sector. So when the agriculture sector develops, the services sector will also be built up in order to provide the support services to these sectors. Let's go ahead to the next topic. I hope the previous points are clear to you. Problems of Indian agriculture. So here you see these are the points which are now being reiterated again because you have done it in chapter 1. So again now these topics here, features of Indian agriculture which we just discussed, and problems of Indian agriculture, we will do it very quickly because these are the same points which are being repeated and you are aware of the points by now. So let us just go through the points once again. Low production and productivity. As you are aware, agricultural production was very low in the initial years of planning because of the colonial exploitation of the Britishers, and productivity too was low. So per hectare land productivity was low. Per hectare or per acre, or even we can say per person, productivity was low because agriculture sector was in a state of stagnation. It was not modernized. It was lacking many means which would help it to produce more. high degree of uncertainty owing to dependence on monsoon. Yes, agriculture sector was dependent on monsoons. There was a lack of permanent irrigation facilities. Dominance of subsistence farming. As you all know, subsistence farming means farming for only family consumption needs, hence little surplus left for sale in the market. Exploitative agrarian relations. There was a gulf between owners and tillers. Now, how can we understand exploitative agrarian relations? So these are the relations between the owners, landlords, and the tenants or the tillers of the soil. There was a gulf, a separation between owners and tillers. Why? Because the owners were only interested to take rents, huge amounts of rents from the cultivators, and they were not interested in improving agriculture or investing in it and improving the condition of the tillers. So there was a gulf between owners and tillers. So there was landlord and tenant conflict. So I hope you can understand the words here: tenants, tillers. Tillers, those who were actually cultivating the land. Owners and landlords are the synonyms here. Tenants are those who are cultivating the lands of the landlords on rent, and so therefore there is a gulf between owners and tillers, landlord and tenant conflict. Why? Because the owners were seldom interested to improve agriculture. They used to extract high rents in terms of the produce of the land, and the tillers were exploited. So, moving on to the next point: lack of modernization, as farmers were still depending on traditional methods. Small and fragmented land holdings. Now, land holdings is the size of the land which was small, and fragmented, it was scattered too. Now, as there was heavy workforce engaged in agriculture, large uh, number of people engaged in agriculture, so the land was getting distributed into smaller parts. Even when the land was being passed on from one generation to the other, it was getting smaller in size as it was getting distributed, and fragmented too. So the land holdings were small and fragmented, which was a hindrance to the growth of agriculture, because in small and fragmented holdings, mechanization or modernization will not be possible. So disguised unemployment again is related to the fact that a large working population was engaged in agriculture more than the requirement. So because the other sectors which I mentioned in the previous topic, features of agriculture also, because the other sectors were underdeveloped, secondary and tertiary, and there was lack of any other job opportunities, there was disguised unemployment due to large working population in the agricultural sector, more than the requirement. Hence, when people are excess in any sector, it will lead to disguised unemployment. Next, lack of organized marketing. As farmers were forced to sell to middlemen locally, even at low rates or at lesser prices. So this was called distress sale, when the farmers were forced to sell to middlemen or money lenders because they were indebted to the money lenders. So there was a lack of an organized marketing system. So this was also an hindrance for the farmers, as they could not earn the income that they could have earned by selling their produce. Cropping pattern was unscientific. This point will be elaborated a little bit later when the topics are dealt with in Green Revolution, which will be the next topics that we will be doing. So deficiency of finance also, as farmers were dependent on moneylenders. So you see the last point here. Yes, there was always a lack of funds, so farmers could not invest. They were doing only subsistence farming, little surplus was left with them, hence they were always deficient with funds or money to invest. Also, they were indebted to money lenders, hence deficiency of finance or funds. Also, because of absence of a banking system or institutional network of providing funds to the farmers was not there in the initial stages of planning. So you see here the problems of Indian agriculture. This will help you to understand the next topic, which is the important part in the chapter. So we come to the next topic here, which we will start in detail later. So let us just understand or get introduced to what we will be doing under this topic, reforms in Indian agriculture. So this is collectively called agrarian reforms. Now, as it suggests here, the problems of Indian agriculture led to the government to take serious reform measures after independence. So these reform measures were targeted to for the agricultural sector in order to bring drastic changes in this sector for increasing the crop production and also for development of this sector and for the development of the farmers as well. So the reform measures are classified into three broad headings: technical reforms, institutional reforms, which is called land reforms, and general reforms. Now, technical reforms is the part which will be discussed under the heading Green Revolution. As you can see the subtopics that are put here, this will all be collectively studied under Green Revolution, which will be done after the topic institutional reforms. So this is the topic that we will start next. We will go into the details of each of the points that is given here. Coming to general reforms, as you can see here, expansion of irrigation facilities, provision of credit, which is finance of funds for farming, regulated markets and cooperative marketing societies. So this is talking about an organized marketing system and also a proper price policy for the crops of the farmers, which the government will do. So providing a proper price for the crops is the part of the government. It is the government initiative to see to it that the farmers get proper prices for their crops. So these points will not be elaborated in too much in detail. The focus of the chapter here is to understand what is land reforms and technical reforms under the heading Green Revolution. So next we will start institutional reforms. So whatever is discussed today, features of agriculture and problems of agriculture, as well as land reforms, that is in collectively agrarian reforms, and a short introduction to it is given today. We will continue with these topics in the next video. So to understand whatever we have done till now in this topic, agricultural sector, problems and policies, reference material will be sent along with the video. So refer to it so that you can understand all the points even more clearly. So in the next video, again, let me repeat, we will start land reforms and all the points will be discussed elaborately.